Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the two containers that you see out here on my bench, this white bucket, this black fabric grow bag, they've got the material in them that came out of my recently harvested version 3 outdoor grow bag, worm bag. The outdoor worm bag is now in what I refer to as version 4. I've done 4 what I consider to be outdoor systems, and the most recent incarnation of it was launched 40 days ago using the worms that came out of the material that used to inhabit what's here in these 2 containers. And it's been 31 days since we last checked in on these systems. Basically, the whole thing happening here is cocoon nursery, so it was assumed that the worms are moved out, but their cocoons here still need time to hatch. So the only distinction between what's in these 2 containers is mainly that this is the really fine stuff that was able to pass through this screen that I've got, and this is all of the stuff that got caught up within the screen. But all of it is assumed to have cocoons in it, and well, you know, after 40 days without any adults in here, you would have to think that the last cocoon that was placed in here has already maybe had time to hatch. So my hope is that maybe we can at least get rid of the large chunk materials that's in here. Whatever does fall through the screen, baby worms, cocoons that still need more time, as well as all the nice fine castings that have released themselves from all this large chunk material now that it's dried a little bit, can all be placed into here, and then all the stuff that still needs further composting can go back outside. So that's my aim. Let's get to work. Look at my screener situated over here with the container that's got the large chunk materials in it. Anything that gets caught up in the screen I can shake off and empty into this little box here. Let's see what we got here. I'm also assuming that there's going to be worms in here because we didn't really take a lot of care to try to let worms separate their way out of this stuff. It was all done very rapidly, so my assumption is we'll probably encounter a good number of worms in here too. Whatever, if it's not stuff that needs further composting and is headed outside, it's all just going to end up in the black fabric grow bag to continue for some future endeavor in the near future to round up little baby worms. So I'm sure I'll see a lot of baby worms in here. Peach pit. So hopefully I won't get too distracted in the process. Yeah, we weren't too discerning, so we could have actually bought over a good number of adult worms too in this process when we were screening this material last time, so we'll see what we end up with. I guess ideally everything that gets caught up is stuff that can just pretty much go straight outside. There's no harm in bringing some of the worms that do get caught up in the screen with the large chunk materials outside. They'll just go to help the outdoor initiatives. But it also does seem easy enough to grab a few of them out of the screen and hang on to them. Although if I just take my time, they'll probably squirm down out of this material down into the bucket. Or, you know, I guess if I am actually going to resort to individually picking worms out of the screen, I might as well just have the black fabric grow bag open so I could just take them and drop them straight into, you know, where we've got all the, well, I mean, at this point I'm assuming it's a cocoon nursery, so I'd like to think that it's mainly a roundup of baby worms, but yeah, like I said, we were not discerning. There's a good chance that that material had a good number of worms in it besides cocoons. And, well, as I said, no harm in sending some worms to help with the outside work in the garden or the outside compost bins, but I also like the ideas of, I don't know, being able to round the worms up and hang on to them. Although all the worms that were hauled out of this material previously, like I said, were used to launch an outdoor system, so I don't think we were really intending to keep these worms that we eventually collect inside, although we could. Who knows? We'll see. Well, you know, I've gone through a few more handfuls, and it's so nice to see how all these castings are jiggling right off all of these seeds and shells and chunks of stuff. And it also does seem like if I, take a little bit of time to look through what's been placed here into the screen, then I'll, easily find a number of worms that I've been dropping into here. And that also gives a little bit of time for this stuff to be exposed to the bright lights above, allowing the worms to dive down out of my reach. So it does also somewhat limit the number of worms that are coming over in each handful. But this is not going as quickly as I thought it would, because you know what always happens? You start kind of just, getting into it. Start staring down into the thing that you're looking at. And, oh, there's another worm, and oh, check that out, whatever. So, whatever. Originally, I thought that it'd be like, grab a few handfuls, shake it a bit, we'll be done in no time. It's my own fault for just being the curious type that wants to explore all the time. So, it won't take too long. There's not a lot here, so we'll just press on. It's really fortunate that all the castings are dropping so easily off of these large chunk materials. The whole thing is still so light, so I think I'm just getting a little crowded inside of this screen. I don't want to have stuff bouncing around and falling out. So here, separated from the large bucket, now I could feel that this is what's really making up the weight of the majority of the whole contraption. So offloading a little bit here should make it a little easier for us to handle. I guess I'll have a little cleanup to do around here afterwards. But we're getting there, making good progress. Let's continue. Trying not to dig down into this pile, because I'm assuming that I'm gradually driving worms down into the pile, and then at the end we'll have a good number of worms that we could very easily round up. So yeah, this is pretty interesting, nice stuff. I'm just kind of taking my time, so I'm not in a real hurry. Taking my sweet old time. I'm beginning to get that feeling like it might be a good idea to clear out this screen one more time. Then I think we could probably get to the finish line with just one more round of what's remaining in here. So let's do another empty. And you know what, before we, gotta be careful. We didn't even really look at the finished castings that did pass through, and they're not 100% perfect. I can see a bunch of debris in there in addition to just the fine castings, but we're not going to worry too much about it. That's okay. That drop. Drop the peach pit. Let's bring it back over here so that we can include it with the stuff that we're emptying out of our screen over here. Try to do it in a way that doesn't create a huge mess. Now we're starting to really get a pretty good collection of stuff here, which has been freed of all these castings. Coming together pretty good. And we'll send all this stuff back out to the outdoor compost pile to start on its own. Although there's so much stuff in here. Seeds, cherry pits, peanut shells, all kinds of weird stuff going on in there. Alright, we're getting there. Let's press on. Well, I feel like I'm getting to that point where for the third time it would be probably nice to unload this screen. But it also seems to me like what remains in the white bucket could probably just go right into the screen as is. And we could try to see what we could do about just letting it run through the screen, all the castings. Hopefully a lot of the worms would just pass right through. We'd catch whatever remaining large chunk materials are in it, and we'd be done. And hopefully it don't cause a lot of trauma for the little wormies in the process. So let me shake this thing out, we'll empty it, and then we'll give that a try of just emptying the white bucket's contents right into the screen. Let's see what we can make of it. Wow, and our collection of stuff in this yellow tub is certainly growing a lot too. Look at that. Kind of expected for more of it to be castings and less of it to be this stuff, but it's not too surprising that it is in fact to a large degree all the stuff that just wouldn't break down with just a little bit of casting material stuck to it. So alright, well, this is the moment of truth where I get to make either a a great scene where I move it all over gracefully and don't embarrass myself, or maybe I end up making a huge mess, pouring half the stuff all over the room. So let's see, what's the easiest way to avoid a big, huge disaster. I guess it'll make good sense to try to, oh wow, look at that. I just went ahead and I just sort of dislodged the, oh brother, let's see. There's a whole bunch of worms down here. Oh. Here, let's get this out of the way. Check this out. There's so many worms down in this stuff, it's incredible. Let's see if I can just jiggle it around again. Yeah. As soon as you jiggle it around, you can see a good number of worms hanging out down in this stuff already. So, curious to see what happens when we put the whole shebang down into the screen. Should be interesting. So let's see how it goes. Good bit of moisture. A great number of worms. Very nice. And there's still a little bit of like peach pits and other things in here, but not too much at this point. Seems to me like mostly worms. Let's see what we can get out of this white bucket, try to clean it out. Got a little bit more here. Alright, I think the important thing was just that we got all the worms out of the white bucket, and I think we have. So, not sure exactly how to play this. I suppose a little bit of agitation should pretty much result in a lot of these castings just passing right through the screen below. Maybe we'll give it a little shake and see what happens. How does that sound? A lot of stuff in here. Oh, look at all these worms, crazy. There's got to be hundreds and hundreds of worms in here. It almost seems to me like if we just come back in here a couple times and keep agitating them, keep driving them down, there's not very far for them to go. They'll hit the mesh and they'll just have to dive down, I guess, and then we'll have them all down below and we'll have all the peanut shells and other junk up here on top. I always wondered how this would go. How something like this might play out, because I've never done this before. Actually taken material, you know, chock full of worms and tried just screening it. But I have seen other similar examples where they put all the material that they want to depopulate the worms. It's a relatively thin layer like we've got here, and they put the bright lights on, and then the worms dive down through a screen, down where they want the worms to be, down into some material down below. And I wonder if the worms will do that here. That'd be kind of nice. Well, I guess I'll just leave them a little time so they could squirm away. Well, I guess I'll fiddle around with this for a little while. I'll, you know, jostle the material around, see if I can help some of it to pass down through the screen, maybe even convince a few worms to dive down through the screen. And hopefully in a short while we'll be down to just shells and sticks and stuff that could be included with all the reject material that got caught up in the screen. I got a feeling we're going to have ourselves a tub with not just a little bit more nice castings in it down here in the red bucket, but a whole bunch of worms too. Alright, I don't want to be too rough. Let's let them dive again and I'll come back and jostle again momentarily. Oh, this might take a couple check-ins and a little bit of time. I'm in no hurry. I could always just let these worms dive every few minutes. I can check back in here. I could do a little bit more screening. It does seem to me like every time we sort of move the material around like this, the castings are going to be passing through the screen and reducing the overall amount of material in here. So perhaps it is better to keep this stuff moving, and I don't know. Every now and then it does seem like it might be beneficial to just let the wormies dive down into this stuff. But pretty soon this stuff will all be down through the screen and we'll be done here. Well, it seems like maybe doing this 2 or 3 more times might get us there. But it's a little bit slow going, and gosh, I feel bad for these little wormies. All I want is to separate them from all the peanut shells and sticks and pits. All I want is for them to dive down through the screen, down into the bucket below. Go guys, go, go, go. I wonder if I'm going about this differently. Maybe what I should do is, after they've all gone down, is to maybe skim all the large chunks off the top that have been evacuated of worms or something. I don't know. This feels a little bit inefficient. Perhaps this stuff would all crumble more easily and pass through the screen if it was just a little bit drier, but this is everything that was at the very bottom, so it's got a good degree of moisture to it. Well, whatever. Patience. We'll get there. Gradually. What is that? Another cocoon. I keep seeing, not keep seeing, but I have actually now started seeing a cocoon or two. Because I actually did start wondering, hey, I wonder how many there are that still need to be hatched. And there's a couple left. But in the beginning it was starting to seem like I wasn't seeing any. And that I kind of assumed that they had all hatched already, but as usual, all I had to do was slow down a little bit to be able to pretty easily catch a glimpse of them. And they're in here still. Hope is that they'll all just pass right through and they'll stay together with the worms, and that the only stuff that we're bringing out for the most part is just the large chunk materials. Hopefully we're not hauling a whole bunch of wormies or cocoons outside. Not that it would be the end of the world. Alright. Slowly but surely. This just feels so intrusive on these poor worms, you know? I just wish they would dive down and go through the screen and we'd be done already here, finally. Oh boy. Poor wormies. Going through all this abuse I keep dishing out for them. So it's a little bit unusual, but I've sort of ended up with this little, almost like a light separation set up down here within my screen. Every now and then I see a worm, like I don't know if you can see this little worm over here. I'll try to see if I can do whatever it takes to get them to squirm down through the screen. My hope is that all the stuff that I'm skimming off the top has already had the majority of the worms dive down and leave the stuff. So the stuff over here, this pile, has already, for the most part I believe, been depopulated of worms, although all I had to do was go through it a little bit, and there I go with a couple of them right away. Right now I guess passing through the screen seems to be my objective for what I want the worms to do, because here again, as I gradually work the material down in this pile over here where all the worms are, my expectation is that they're just diving down. But by even just placing them right out here into the open where there's the bright lights, you're not seeing much of them passing through the material. So how much of that they're doing down here at the bottom of this pile is questionable. But I might unload all this stuff that's pretty much worm free at this point to give myself a little bit more working room But we're getting there. It's really just kind of fiddling around at this point, goofing off, having some fun with the wormies. And the work continues. Yeah, let's make ourselves a little bit of room. Get this stuff out of here. Every now and then I keep spotting a worm, little baby worm right there. So many small ones, it's incredible. They're all over the place. And they're the hardest, obviously, to handle because they're just minuscule with my big fat fingers. But I got a feeling that this pile here has got to be, for the most part, worms anymore. If we were to shake that stuff out and spread it around, I wonder what we would end up with here. Maybe a bunch of stuff that'll actually start passing through the screen here eventually. A little bit more damp than most of the stuff that we've had to handle here up until now. And here too, just like typical light separation, the worms are continuing to dive down into this little mound here. So this little mound over here is pretty much almost all worms at this point. Not much of anything else. Here and there's a cherry pit or something, but we've got a good number of worms in here. Many, many worms. Well, I guess one of the main pitfalls with doing what I'm doing here is that it is kind of interesting to see what happens, and you kind of get caught up in what's happening, and then, you know, this really did transform from something that I envisioned originally as just being sort of a quickie 5-10 minute thing, jamming all this material down through the screen, 1, 2, 3. Once again, my idea here was to not pay attention to worms. Famous last words. My idea was just to really focus more on this, you know, making sure that I get all of this large chunk material out of the picture, and that all this stuff left would just be, you know, combined into the big black grow bag and left to continue as if it was still a cocoon nursery. But I'm starting to feel less and less like what I'm dealing with here is a cocoon, not so much a cocoon nursery anymore, but, you know, a big mound of dozens, if not hundreds of worms here, right? Not to mention what's, you know, down within the bucket too. So I think my attention is starting to turn from, you know, this stuff and wanting to focus on just getting it out into the compost barrel. Let it continue. I'm now really, for whatever reason, I guess, unavoidable, finding myself really sidetracked by all the worms that I'm finding in here. And I am starting to wonder if, rather than the thing to do here is not going to be to just dump them into that big bag of castings in the black grow bag, but possibly start thinking about maybe starting a new bin with these little guys. I mean, the version 4.0 of the outdoor worm bag is so heavily populated that I don't think it would require additional worms. So that thing is certainly in no need for more worms, and I've got a couple freshly built bins ready to go. I could possibly even see us launching a worm bin today. Stranger things have happened. Alright, let's keep getting this junk out of here. Very interesting little thing we're doing here. Not really turning out anything like what I had anticipated. So many worms. That was, I guess, the biggest surprise for me. I think maybe we're down to the last point here where maybe one last jiggle to see what I can release from the worms, and then maybe not even try to force them to all pass through the screen. Maybe I can just pick up a pile of them here once they've broken free of all the stuff that is mingled in with them here. Or I wonder if we just keep letting them do the dive thing. Now that we've got very little material for them to hide in, maybe the best thing is to just let them react to the light and possibly pass through the screen below. Yeah, why don't we just give that one more try, see how that goes. And maybe we'll be done here. Huh. Do my eyes deceive me? I stepped away for just a few minutes. Oh, they're just hiding under things. I would imagine that for them, that, you know, climbing down through the screen material must be a little peculiar. So it's kind of like get away from the bright lights and then, woo, pass through the screen and dangle down and fall. It does seem like something they're maybe not too keen on doing. But who knows, maybe if we just keep nudging them gently, we'll get them to do our bidding. I think we're almost there. Definitely close. Well, it is starting to seem to me like I should just be able to collect up all these shells and stuff and almost just pick them up and pull them out of here, because the worms are all, for the most part, separating from these things. And it's always right when I'm saying something that I find something completely contrary to it. So here's just a little, I'm not even sure what it is, some sort of a little nut or hollow something that the worms have crawled into to make themselves a little fort. So, sorry guys, I need you to evacuate and go join the rest of the gang. I don't know, can I collect up this stuff while the worms remain sort of attached to the screen and will now eventually dive down, hopefully, once and for all? It does seem like we're able to collect up the better part of it. Only a couple worms coming along for the ride. The majority of them staying where they were and hopefully now diving down. I think we're getting close. Poor worms. It's like worm torture. Yeah, you know, let's give them one last chance to get away from the stuff that they're hanging out in. Hopefully dive down. Relinquish these last few bits that we want to return to the composting process outside, and we'll be finished here. Alright, well, I think we're just going to leave it at that. If there's still a few worms attached to these last few pieces that I'm pulling out, then that's okay too. I'm not going to worry about it. The only thing that I'm feeling at this point, in terms of deviating from the original plan, was that, you know, the whole idea here was to screen through this material and then really just empty it. Put it all right into the container with the finished castings in it, now that it's all been neatly screened through. But now that it's, you know, evident that it's also loaded with worms, I'm reluctant to follow through with the original game plan. I'm actually starting to wonder if it might be an opportunity for us to take what's in the sifter bucket down in here and, ooh, look at all those wormies, and start up a new bin with them. So rather than, I don't know, rather than following through and dumping these castings down into the grow bag and then releasing the worms into that large mass of material, I'm inclined to maybe return this stuff right back down into the white bucket that we've been keeping everything isolated in. while it was large chunk material that we were trying to keep isolated. But I believe that at this point, what we're going to be trying to keep isolated here is all the wormies that we collected out of the large chunk material, and possibly launching off a new bin with them. So I think I'm just going to pick out what remains here. What's the easiest way to do this at this point? Jiggle it around, whatever worms made it through the screen get to go down in the bucket. Everything else that got caught in the screen gets taken outside. And that brings us to the finish line. Finally. Holy cow, I've spent so much time on this. Literally, I thought this was going to be like a 5-minute thing, because I thought that the entire focus of this was going to be, you know, not all the worms that I observe here, but rather the large chunk materials that I was aiming to, you know, exclude and remove and get them out of the picture, and at the same time consolidate, you know, what I've got going on here as far as Cocoon Nursery in the wake of the completion of Outdoor Worm Bag version 3. But I am switching gears, I think. I am starting to like the idea of using the worms that we've collected here to launch off a nice new bin. I've got 2 newly built bins just waiting to go, and other containers I could use if I opted to use something different. But at this point, I guess we'll consider the objective as met, because the main objective was, after all, to focus on this stuff right here, get it all separated and out of the picture and back outside into a composting barrel, and at the same time see what we could do about collecting up all the little itsy bitsy worms so as to not return them back outside, and hopefully keep them here within the wormery community for projects unknown, some future mission that I can come up with pretty easily for them to embark on for me. Alright, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to take what's in my screen here, I'm going to just empty it back into the white bucket, and I'm going to sleep on it. And knowing that I've got a whole bucket full of, not full of, but, you know, loaded with a whole lot of worms, I got a feeling I'm going to come up with some sort of a pretty good game plan for them by tomorrow, and then we'll pick up from where I left off here then. Alright everyone, you know what? It is getting late, and I do need to just leave this as is, kind of a half-baked job, and we'll pick up on this at another time. But mission accomplished. We cleaned out all the large chunk material, and now we're really just left with Cocoon Nursery and castings. Alright, I'm going to pack up, clean up the mess, but I'm not going to waste your time with that because that's boring. Before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.